Hey, hey, did y'all miss me? So good to see everybody. It has been a couple of weeks since I have been on, and I don't know, maybe you all have missed me, maybe you have not. I don't know, we'll find out. But I am excited to be back with you, and we have a new conversation series that we are talking about for this month of April. So, for those of you that know my story or know a part of my story, you will know that I am a widow, and April 16th will mark me being a widow for 7 years. And so I had so much fun during Women's History Month interviewing women. I thought, why not interview widows and really bring to surface and bring to light some of the other women that I have met on this journey of being a widow and other just young Black women who, we're all kind of trying to figure it out together. And so I am going to bring you throughout the month some women that I have met, and so that they can share a little bit about their story. So please like, share, comment, join in the conversation with us. Don't just be a bystander. If you know a widow that is in your life, please make sure that you reach out to them and have them watch this, if not on the live stream, they can catch the replay, and they can also catch the replay on my YouTube channel. So make sure that you are sharing, liking, commenting. We want to make sure to include everybody. So, first up on this interview is I'm going to take one of these AirPods out because I feel like I'm yelling and I don't think I want to do that. But first up, we are going to join forces, and I am going to bring you Danielle Shaw. And I'm not sure exactly when I met Danielle on this journey, but I have hosted a couple of things specifically for widows, and I know that she was, in the group sharing some of her wisdom and some of her nuggets. So, Danielle, welcome to the stream. Welcome to the conversation. How are you?
Hi, everybody. I'm okay. I'm doing okay. Yeah. How
Good.
are you?
I'm great. I'm great. Thank you for joining me, and thank you for, just joining in this conversation and telling us a little bit about who you are and your widow journey. I can't wait to dive into the conversation.
Well, I think I'm ready, Elle. I think I'm ready.
You're definitely ready. I know you are. So why don't we just start by letting people know who you are, where you hail from, and we'll start there.
Okay. Well, I'm Danielle Shaw. I am from Texas City, Texas, which is a small city near Galveston, about 15 minutes from Galveston, Texas. Um, it's maybe about 45 minutes from Houston. I was born and raised there. I went to college in Denton, Texas, at Texas Woman's University. I am a middle school librarian. I am the mother of two sons. They are now 16 and 21. So that's a little bit about me.
Wow, 16 and 21. Whew.
Yes, boys. I
I'm
love
like,
it.
how is that? I have a daughter, so I'm like, boys, I don't know nothing about the boy life.
Listen, I love it. I am the typical boy mom. It's something about being a boy mom, and I have my girls come in with my nieces, but yeah, I am the typical boy mom. Yeah, we have to jack them up sometimes, but they are wonderful, wonderful boys or young men.
I
They are wonderful young men.
Right, because they have definitely grown. So
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, wonderful. Well, we are not going to like hold this up. We are going to get right to the nitty gritty of why we're having this conversation. And as people saw, I called it a conversation series, Widows Unveiled. And, I put it that way because I really feel like this is an unveiling of such, because I feel like being a widow sometimes is such a mystery, or like people are just like, man, she was so young, or what happened? All of these things that are running around in people's minds. So, why don't you tell us how old you were when you became a widow, what happened, and just take us through your story a little bit.
Well, let's see. Um, I was 39 years old. I had just turned 39 on September 1st, 2015. And my husband passed away on September 7th, 2015. It was my sons and I were out of school that day because it was Labor Day. And so we were at home and we were planning, the typical barbecue and everything like that. And when I look back on that day, there are so many things. It's like that I was like, maybe God was giving me signs and I just did not know what they were. But he had left. He was going to go work out, which was his thing. He worked out a lot. And yeah, he left. And if I take you back to that morning, we woke up, like I said, it was a holiday for myself and my sons. And I remember I was still sitting in the bed just hanging out, chilling on my phone and whatever. And I looked at him, and he was on his knees praying, which is what he usually did in the morning. And I looked over at him, and he was looking at me, and I didn't pay, I didn't pay it any mind. And then as the time was going on, I looked over again. Well, ultimately, I looked over there like three times, and he was looking at me. And I was like, I think the third time I was like, well, hey, what's up? And he was like, nothing. I'm just looking at you. Um, so then he left to go to the gym, and usually my sons would go with him. They were 10 and 15 at the time, and usually they would go to the gym together. But that day he was like, "No, I'm just going to go by myself." And so he went to the gym, and that was it. And I don't remember if he called me or if I called him. And the conversation was, like I said, when I think back on it, it was one of those last conversations, but you don't know that it's the last conversation.
Mm.
And so we were talking, and he was telling me, how he felt about some things. And I just began to tell him how amazing he was, what an amazing husband he was, father, man of God, pastor, and everything like that. And I remember he was walking on the track, and there was a man talking to him. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to let you get off the phone so that you can, have your conversation. And he did not want to get off the phone with me. And like I said, this is me thinking back to that day when as I was going through it, I wasn't thinking nothing like that because I did not know. Of course, I didn't know what was going to happen. And so we finally got off the phone, and my sister and I, we were heading out to the store to go shopping. And I remember I was walking out of my room, out the door, and this force pushed me back to
Mm.
where I just kind of fell to the bed. I mean, it was this force. I couldn't, and it just pushed me back to the bed, to the bed where I was sitting there. And my sister was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm okay." I did not know what happened. And probably about 5 minutes later, I got a call from a number I did not know. And we were living in Fenton, Missouri at the time. And so I answered the phone, and they told me that this is such and such hospital, and we need you to get to the hospital right away. So I was like, okay, still not thinking anything.
Right.
And so we got to the hospital, and my sister dropped me off at the door, and she went to park the car. And my 10-year-old was with us. And I think maybe her children were with us, and they were really, really young, really, really small. And so I remember walking into the hospital, and I told the lady at the information desk, whatever, I'm like, I'm Danielle Shaw. I just received a call. And this woman's eyes immediately filled with tears and
Mm.
turned red. So at that point, I'm like, okay. So she takes me into that room, that room that they take you
Yeah.
to into the hospital. And so
Hmm.
I'm in there by myself because, again, my sister is parking the car with the kids. And I remember looking out the window and just talking to God, like, Lord, this cannot, not now. Like, this cannot happen, right? Like, this cannot be happening right now, because it's like for some reason I guess looking at that woman's eyes and them taking me to this room. And I remember just begging God, begging, 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 like, Lord, this cannot be. This cannot be happening right now. This is not, Lord, please. And so I think by that time, my sister had come in with the kids. And so they were playing with the toys that they have set up in the room. And the doctor came in. And gosh, I don't remember a lot of what he said. I do remember him saying that the ambulance brought him in from the gym, and that uh, he that they brought him back. I heard him say that they brought him back, right? So I was like, okay, and you're sitting there holding your breath because
Mm-hmm.
it's like you know, but you don't want that to be the truth. And
Right.
so then he says, gosh, what did he say? He was like, I think he said, I'm sorry. I think he said, I'm sorry,
Mm.
but I don't remember. I don't remember what else he said. All I know
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
this, I don't know. I just begin to scream. I begin to scream and cry.
I resonate with that. I understand that.
Yeah, I just begin to scream and cry. And he was talking, and my sister, she's in shock as well, just like me. And I'm telling you, I'm squeezing the mess out of her hand. And what brought me to was my 10-year-old. When I
Hmm.
heard him say, my daddy is dead. And it's something, he was just like, are you saying that my daddy is dead? Are you saying that my daddy is dead? Every
Wow.
time I think about
Wow.
that, that takes me somewhere.
Hmm.
And so hearing him and seeing him, it like made me come to myself. Like, okay,
Hmm.
I gotta put my how I'm feeling to the back. And I remember like I said, he was 10 years old, and I picked him up like he was a baby.
Wow.
And I held him and I hugged him until he, he calmed down. But I remember that just so vividly, about how hearing him scream that and hearing him say that just took me out of where I was. And I picked him up, like I said, and I held him like he was a little baby. And it was for a while. And so after that, my sister started making phone calls. And, my mother-in-law was in Dallas, where I am now. And she called her. She had to call my brother-in-law. My oldest son was with his uncle, with my brother-in-law at the time. And so, yeah, I don't think I've ever fully told that story. Um,
And so
like,
I see, and I want you to breathe for a moment. I want you to
okay,
stop and I want you to breathe because I feel it. I feel the energy. I feel how difficult it is to tell that story. And I know that feeling, right? For when people ask me about Paul's death and I tell the story from the beginning. So, yes, I want you to breathe and just relax for a minute because it's a lot. It's a lot to let out. And I know that what happens is when we're telling those stories, we relive those moments, right? And so it can be very difficult to relive that time frame and to see like you probably see what has happened and what took place
hmm
during that time when you were told that your husband was no longer living. So thank you for sharing that first off. Let me say that.
thank
Thank
you.
you for being so open and so vulnerable and telling those hard, difficult moments because those last moments, especially if we know how those last moments were for our spouse, it can just be difficult to share. So thank you for taking the time to share that. So I have so many questions, and I really want
Okay,
to stick to the questions that I'm
ask
supposed to
away,
ask.
ask away.
I'm like, I really want to stick to the questions I'm supposed to ask, but I'm going to veer off for one question,
Okay.
in particular. And if you recall, what were your just initial thoughts? Like when you actually heard the words
Mhm.
and he was no longer there, and when your son is the one who brought you to, what was your initial thought? What did you think?
Again, I was like, this can't be real. That was my first thought. My
Okay.
second thought was, how in the world am I going to do this without him?
Oh my God.
That was
We are
my,
there. That's
yeah,
yes.
that was my, I'm telling you, because I was like, I met him as a freshman in college. We didn't, date or anything, but that's when I met him. And I think we started dating at maybe like 3 years later or something like that, almost 3, 4 years later, something like that. And we got married a month before I turned 22. So I was 21. And then a month later, I turned 22. So at the point that he passed away, I had known him for more than half of my life.
Like,
Yeah.
mhm.
So I met him when I was 17. So
Okay.
if you think about that, I met him when I was 17. He passed away when I was 39. So that's like more than half of my life that I knew him. Not that we were together, but that I knew him and that he was a part of my life as a friend.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And and so yeah, it's like, how am I going to do this? And then when you're married, we were married for 17 years. We had celebrated 17 years of marriage a month before August 1st.
Okay.
So when you are with someone for that long, it's like, what in the world how am I going to do this with these two sons who were super duper close to their
To the
dad? Because
yeah.
he was like, an amazing
Here's a picture
husband.
of your husband and your
Oh
sons,
yeah,
right?
yeah, and it's so, another thing with those pictures, I used to always make him take pictures. Like, no, let's take a picture, let's take a picture, let's take a picture. And he would never want to take pictures, and I'm like, man, you better get over here and take these pictures. But I'm so grateful for that because I have all of these, pictures and memories that, my sons and I can look at. So
Hold
it's
on
like,
to.
take the
That's
picture,
awesome.
honey. If somebody asks you to take the
Absolutely.
picture, take the picture,
You
okay?
take the picture. I'm the same way. Like, let's go. We're gonna take these pictures.
Yes.
Simone hates it. And I'll be like, we
Take
taking
the
pictures.
yes, take the picture, take the picture.
Okay, let me get into my questions because
Okay.
our time is quickly getting away from us.
Okay.
So the first question I'd like you to answer is, what is the biggest misconception about widow? Biggest, based on what you hear, based on what you see, what do you think is the biggest misconception about being a widow?
Well, I think the biggest one is that we are, oh gosh, all older. I think that's the best way for me to put it. And we're not. Um, every widow is not old. Um, and I mean no disrespect by nothing that I'm saying, but every widow is not old and have been married for 40 to 50 years and their
Mhm.
children are grown. And no, that is not every widow's story. I know for me, and like I said, I was 39 years old. I had just turned 39. But there are so many widows who were even younger. Like, you were younger, like when you were like 34,
Mhm.
right?
36.
36. So, and there are
Mhm.
even, women who were younger than that when their husband passed away. So I think that's one of them, is that everyone, they're older, and that is not the case.
Yeah.
And another one is they think that we are rich, honey, that we have this big huge life insurance and we just got money. No, that's not the way that it is. Because you're not
Hilarious. Well,
expecting.
maybe some
So
set up
for
like are set
yeah,
up
for
that way,
some,
but
but
yeah.
for the most part, especially, he was 46. He was older than me, but you're not expecting to die.
Yes. Not
At
young anyway,
not
right?
right. You're not expecting to die at that age. So yeah, that I think that those two things are super, super
I
huge.
don't know what Tylinda is saying. Oh my God, girl. She's a widow that I actually went to high school with, and she'll be interviewed during the series as well. But
Oh,
she's resonating with you right now. So
yes, yes, that is there.
Tylinda is like, listen here. So let's talk a little bit about how you've been able to manage your grief.
Okay.
So it's been 6 years. Although I could hear um what's the word that I want to use? I could hear the in your voice and the way that you described like how you became a widow and how your husband passed. I hear the angst in that, but
Hmm.
I also know that you've been able to move forward and that you've been able to like empower other widows. So how have you managed your grief and the ability to move forward?
Whew, that one, that's a lot because I'm telling you, at the beginning of the widowhood journey, it was, I always say I was in a horribly, horrible, dark place. And I would, when I went back to work, when I was able to drive myself to work, um, I would come home, go to my room, um, and I was working part time at the school then, and then I would just wait for my sons to get home, and I would just go through the motions. I'm telling you, it was awful. And so, in that time, like I said, we were living in Missouri, and we moved back to Dallas in August of 2016. And so, at that time, um, still just kind of, you know, just functioning and just doing what had to be done. I got to a point one day where I said I was tired of feeling this way. Like I understand that I have to grieve, but I did not want to continue to be in that dark place. And so at that time, at my church at that time did not have a widows ministry. And so I became a part of a widows ministry at another location. And that, just coming to the realization that I don't want to be in this place anymore. I have got to you just get tired of, you know, that. Like, I know I have to
Mhm.
grieve, but it doesn't have to be like, it's got to
This
be different.
bad,
Yeah, it
right?
doesn't have to be
Yeah,
this bad. I got to do something different. So I've had to make a move and a choice.
got it.
So that was my first thing, joining a widow support group. I also joined a grief therapy thing. And so we would meet every week. And so
Mhm.
basically, you have to get to the point where you want to do something different. And wanting to move forward does not mean that you are forgetting about your husband.
Yes,
And
yes, speak
and that is
that.
something
Yes,
that I had to realize, because I'm like, well, if I move forward, then that means that I'm forgetting about
not
him.
at all.
And that's not the case. So how can you know you can't, you won't forget. Like, you'll never forget. If I look at my sons, that's enough right there to not
Yeah, because they
forget.
look just like I'm like, they
You
look
know.
just like him. I love it. I love it.
Yeah, so I mean, even if I look at them, but there's no way to forget this my husband, who I was with, and for more than half of my life at the time.
Mhm.
And so
Yeah,
I'm
that's so important, though. I think
yeah,
we have to remember that even though because it's a choice. What you're
yes,
saying right now is basically that it's a choice for us to
choice.
move forward, and because you make that choice does not negate the love and the hurt or any of that. It's just that no, I'm making a choice to say now I have to move on with my life and do things in a different way.
Absolutely. And we have to, um it's important for me, for my sons. We are very open. I have been open from the beginning with them, as well as myself, but I wanted them to see me be open, so that they could feel like they could be open to grieve their
Hmm.
father, to talk about them. um and so that is very, very important, to allow yourself to grieve. I mean, it's we're human. We're going to grieve. We love this person, and so it's okay, but we have to at a point, and I know sometimes it seems harsh, but we have to get to a point where I cannot be stuck in this grief. I have to
Yes.
move forward. There's a difference between
Yes.
grieving in a healthy way versus being stuck in
Yes.
grief. And we don't want to get stuck in grief. We have to do what you need to do, what you need to do to move forward. You have to do it.
Absolutely.
Like I said, if that's becoming a part of a widow support group, if that's going to grief therapy, do what you need to do to move forward, because it's
Absolutely.
it's
That's so
necessary.
important.
Yeah.
You said all the things. I went to therapy, I went to a grief support group. I found all of those things when my husband passed. If you are just joining us, I want to welcome you to a conversation series called Widows Unveiled, where I am talking to widows that I have met along my own widow journey. And we are really just having a conversation so that if people have questions, please make sure that you put your questions in the comments so that we can answer those questions. We have a few more questions that to get through, so that we are not taking all your time this evening. But this is the first interview with several that will come up. And here is my bustling 9-year old that you want to say hi. Okay, she's saying hi. She just got out the shower, getting ready for bed. But Danielle, my next. Okay, you got out the shower at 7:30. Okay, correct me. um, so I have a few more questions for you. But the next question I'm wondering, and I know that I've been intentional about this by doing some of the things that Paul enjoyed doing, but how do you keep your late husband's legacy alive?
Oh wow. Talking about him, talking about him. Even though some people don't want me to talk about him, but I'll continue to talk about him. Um, my sons and I, his birthday is February 13th, and we always do something. Whether it's some cupcakes, or we just sit around and talk about him, and that's like an everyday thing. Whenever the conversation comes up, um, gosh, just holding on to the things that he taught them, and also that he taught me, that we are things that we learned together. I think it's important for us to continue to say their name, to mention their name. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that, regardless of how people make you feel. Yeah, I was in a situation about 2 weeks ago where I was, like, oh gosh, I don't know if I should say his name or not say his name. Yeah, I mean, yeah. So it's just keeping the memories alive, keeping the memories alive when Father's Day comes. When Valentine's Day, he proposed to me on Valentine's Day. So like, just like reliving, or not, maybe not reliving, but remembering those
Those
things.
moments,
Yeah,
yeah.
remembering those moments. Um, yeah, it's so much. And like I said, it's not just once or twice, 3 times a year. It's a, we have open dialogue about him, about
Hmm.
their dad, about my husband, and it's amazing. Let me tell you something. Your children see everything, okay? Your children
Yeah, they
see
do.
everything. And my now 16-year-old, who was 10, he was like, Mom, he just told me this the other day. Mama, when I get married, you are definitely one of those people that I'm going to come and talk to about my marriage, because I saw you and Daddy do it, and I need to talk to people that
I
did it
love
right.
it. I
So
love
if
it.
I mean, if
That's
that's
great.
not
Well, that just
right,
shows you he is watching, right? He was
yeah,
watching.
he was watching it. I mean, the stuff that they say. So even that is keeping his legacy alive. That he
Absolutely.
thinks so much that he saw the way his dad treated me, and they open up doors. They do, a lot of the stuff that they saw their dad do. I mean, I can
Yeah.
barely take out the trash, and yeah, I mean,
Girl, and
it's
you should be taking out the trash. I'm
well,
like, you got them two young
yeah.
men at home.
And so yeah, it's like, just continuing just to like remember what the impact that he made on our lives, because it was such a huge impact. Like, even just me being the Danielle who I am today, he had some impact in that. He had a part in
Absolutely.
that. You know what I mean? He did. He really did.
Absolutely. I love it. So I imagine, and if people shared this like I asked them to, that there is a recent widow. I
Hmm.
actually, was communicating with someone that I went to high school with. He recently passed and left a widow with two children. And I reached out to her to let her know I was doing these interviews. And of course, I've reached out to her to just be a resource for her. So, what words of wisdom do you have to a recent widow?
Oh, breathe. First of all, just breathe. And take it one moment. I remember I would say sometimes I would have to take it 1 minute at a time, just 1 minute at a time. Also, that what they're feeling is perfectly normal for where they are. Don't feel guilty. Don't try to be superwoman. Just take the moments as they come, because widowhood is not easy. Okay. You're seeing me, it'll be 6 years in on September 7th. This is me almost 6 years out. At a few months in, or a year in, or 2 years in, it was a totally different story, but it was okay. It was okay. And someone had to tell me that this was okay, because you're trying to do everything. You're trying to do everything for the kids. You're try to keep some sense of normalcy in this new life, this new normal that you have to live. So, breathe and take things one moment at a time, and give
I
yourself
love
some
that.
grace. Give yourself grace, because I know for me, I overcompensated. I tried so hard, but I'm not their father. I cannot replace their father. I am a woman. I am their mother. So I
Yeah.
had to stick with doing that. It took me time to realize that. And I also want to say, of course, put lean into God. I remember. I mean, if I was never close to the Lord before, which I was, I am even much more closer to Him now, and really,
Mhm.
really lean into Him. I remember not too long after Pastor Shaw passed away, God took me to Isaiah 54, and that has become my chapter. That has become my chapter. I'm sure I had read it before. I'm sure I did, but it did not
But it
apply to
didn't
me at
speak
the
to
time.
you, right? It
Yeah,
didn't speak to you
exactly.
until that time.
Until
Yeah.
then, and yeah,
And
so
I want to say, because I know that, so I don't know who's watching this. I don't know who comes across this. And so I can imagine that someone will come across and say, well, how can I lean into God, right? Like, how
mhm.
God took my spouse, right? God
Oh,
took my loved one, whatever the case may be. And so I know that that can open up a whole nother can of
oh
worms. And so
yeah, it can.
we don't have
Yeah,
time
it
for all
can.
of that.
Yeah, it really
However,
can.
I just want to encourage, if that is you, if that is a person who's saying, I don't know how, or I can't lean into God, or I don't want to lean into God, whatever the
Uh-huh.
case may be, um, to just find a way to look at a bigger picture and to tell God, to express God. Because this is one of the things that I did. I stood in my husband's funeral and I said very clearly, God, I am angry with you right now.
Yes.
I'm angry
Yes.
because this is not the way this was supposed to go. This is not the story that I had, in mind.
Yeah.
And so it's okay to express that,
Yeah.
but I do encourage you to get into a faith community or find someone who can support you in just uncovering and unwrapping some of that. So we'll leave it there for
Absolutely.
now
Okay.
because
Oh yes.
I wanted to say that because I know some people are like, well, there is no God, or I can't
Yeah.
believe in God
Yeah.
if my spouse was taken or if my loved one was taken. So
Yeah.
we'll leave that. So,
Absolutely.
last question. This is a juicy
Okay.
one. You
All right.
ready?
I'm ready.
So, the people would like to know, and the people meaning me, the
Okay.
people would
Okay.
like to
Okay.
know what happens next in your love story.
Well, listen, I don't know. I'm gonna tell you this. I will say this. I will say this. I'm gonna say probably maybe 2 to 3 years ago that I even began to be open to another love story, because I was not open at all. I was not open. So I'll say that. But listen, I mean, I'm open. That's really, I mean, and in the meanwhile, I'm receiving love in other places, like, my family and stuff like that. But listen, I'm open. I think that's the best way for me to say.
You like, that's
Yeah,
all I got. All
that's
I
all
got
I
is
got.
I'm
I
open.
don't have anything else. Have I been out? Oh, yes, I have. I've been out on,
Okay.
dates. But listen, some of these young men, they're different.
Girl,
They are
that's
very
that's another
different.
look. We're gonna have to do a whole nother conversation series
Hmm.
about widow dating. Like
Yes,
that's a whole
that's
nother
that's a whole
other
nother. I
other
mean,
thing.
it really really is. It's a whole nother thing, because I'm telling you, they're different. They're different. I'll just
They
say
are
that.
different. Well, Danielle, it has been such an honor. I'm gonna show this last picture of that I pulled of you and your boys
Oh
because I
yeah.
just want the people to see just how you are blossoming. That dress is all bright. Your boys looking like your husband.
Hmm. Indeed, indeed they are. Indeed they are. Yeah.
So before we wrap up, is there anything else that you would just like to share with the audience, share with widows, share with people that are supporting widows on this journey? Is there anything at
Uh,
all that you'd like to share?
Again, I just want to say to my widow sisters, to give yourself grace and to breathe. Breathe. Find your tribe, find your people. I promise you, we're out here because I had to find my people. There's no one that that I knew at the time when I became a widow that was a widow. Um they were older than me. So find your people. I had to go online to find my people. Um
Yep.
find your people, give yourself grace. And I do want to say something to the people who support widows, who are there, because I have an amazing support system. And thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you for being there, um, for a widow and her children, because there are people, and sometimes it's people you don't even know. You don't even know
Yes.
these people, and then,
Yes.
to be honest, that's what's been for me and my experience, is people that I don't even know, that will, be there. And because everybody, what, let me say this last thing. This just came to me. Don't be surprised if some of the people, your friends, people who you were close to or thought that you were close to, don't be surprised if they leave your life. And don't feel bad about that. That's a normal part of losing someone. That's a normal part. I mean, I did not
So
know
see,
that.
you're opening up a whole nother can of
I know.
worms. And we
I
can't
just
so because so I've read that. So
listen.
here's the thing. I've read that and I've heard people say that. I personally cannot say that that's been my experience. Thank God,
That's a
right? Like
blessing.
that's not been my experience. But I've read that. I've read that in a
Yes.
number of books that widows have written. I've read that in a number of places and I'm like, I don't I don't understand that. Like
I'm
I
glad
I
that you
just
don't. I'm
yeah.
really, I really am glad that you don't, because that's a whole nother level of hurt and pain. um,
Yes.
that you have to go through. I know because I experienced it. Um, yeah, and you're shocked, you're wondering, you're like, what in the world? What did I do? You didn't do
Hmm.
anything, honey. You didn't do anything but live. I mean, you're
Wow.
you didn't do anything. I'm trying to tell you, this is a part of when you lose somebody, not just a husband, but when you lose someone. I mean, I experienced it, or my brother, my sister, and I experienced it when our mother passed away. I experienced it. My sons experienced it when we moved. I mean, when their dad passed away. My 16-year-old, I'm sorry, my 21-year-old, who was 16 at the time, when we came back to Dallas, he was like, "Mama, we could have stayed in St. Louis for this because we're the people that said they want to be there."
Wow.
He was
Wow.
16. I didn't say anything.
Wow.
He came to talk to me, and he said that to me. So he was 16. Now, why should he have had to even experience that with everything else that he had going on? So it's a real thing. And I
Absolutely.
am, I am so, I'm grateful that you didn't have to go through that. But yes, it's
But
real,
it's
and it
real.
happens. It
Well,
happens.
thank you for sharing that nugget, because if someone experiences that, I just don't want them to be surprised.
Right.
But yes, you have given so much today. Thank you for again for sharing your story, for taking us through that entire process, right? Because that is very difficult to do, and so I want you to make sure you meditate tonight. Make sure you get into a
I'm
quiet space,
definitely.
because sometimes those emotions, yeah, those emotions
Mhm,
come back up and it can be very difficult to navigate.
mhm.
So, Danielle, I just want to thank you for your time. I appreciate you coming on and joining me on this evening for these conversations. Widows Unveiled. You are a widow that has been unveiled, and I just thank you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. It was great. It was. I tell you, a little nervous, but I got over that real quick. So
All right,
that's
I
a
will
good
have you
thing.
stand by. Thank you all for joining us on this evening for a conversation series, Widows Unveiled, where, again, I am a widow of almost 7 years, and I just wanted to highlight and show some of the women that I have been connected to who have helped me on my widow journey. So there will be more of these conversations throughout the month, and I'm excited. I will be back tomorrow evening with one of my high school classmates, who is also a widow, and we will hear her story and how she has been able to navigate this journey. So I thank you for joining me. Make sure you look out, make sure you get the notifications so that you can watch and share this. If you have a widow in your life, if you know a widow, make sure that you share this with them widely. You can go to YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook. This is where this is shared. So thank you. Have a good night.